To the Italian mind, the love of Verdi is inseparable to the love of Italy. He was an intensely private man who, nonetheless, became identified with the politics of Risorgimento, or the politics for a united Italy. He was a precocious musician. He learned to play keyboards when an altar boy and was, at the age of 8, sufficiently talented to take the place of his teacher as church organist when his mentor passed away. His father encouraged his son to further expand his musical education. By the age of 12, he was composing music for his church. At the age of 15, he composed a dramatic cantata that was performed in Bergamo. At the age of 20, he was working in the world of bel canto opera in Milan. 6 years later, he staged Oberto, his first opera, and received a commission to compose 3 more. His young wife and 2 children died during the composition of his second opera, a comedy he found ill-suited to the gravity of his loss. He would only return to comedy 30 operas later with his last, Falstaff. He completed Nabucco at the age of 28. Its success was of such that it traveled round the world during the next decade, arriving in New York when he was 35 years old. He composed 20 more operas during the next 16 years, with Macbeth being among his early favorites. Nabucco's opening chorus of Israelites lamenting their captivity was utilized by patriots who desired a unified Italy. This theme was taken up again in 1849's The Battle of Legnano. The tenor dies singing, "Whoever dies for the fatherland cannot be evil-minded." His next 3 operas, Rigoletto, Il Trovatore, and La Traviata, cemented his worldwide fame as an operatic master, a reputation that would only grow during the 4 decades that remained to him. Still to come were Simone Boccanegra, Un balla maschera, La Forza del Destino, Don Carlo, Aida, Otello, and Falstaff. In between these celebrated works, he married Giuseppina Strepponi, invested in large tracts of land, and was elected to political office. Before his betrothal to Strepponi, he lived with her for several years, an arrangement that was seen by some to be of questionable virtue. His mistress was sometimes shunned by the less tolerant locals. It was during this period that he wrote Luisa Miller, Stavelio, Rigoletto, Il Trovatore, and La Traviata. Each were dramas whose heroines were adjudged lax in conventional morality. He married Giuseppina in 1859. With their virtue secured, Verdi once again became associated with the unification of Italy. The phrase Viva Verdi became synonymous with the acronym comprising the first letters of the Italian phrase, which is translated as Viva Vittorio Emanuele, King of Italy. He accepted a ceremonial appointment to the Senate after the subsequent unification, but had little real interest in the practical workings of state. Un balla maschera was moved from Sweden to colonial Boston to accommodate the censors, who would not allow the libretto whose major plot point was a European regicide. He then worked on La Forza del Destino and Don Carlo before concluding the 1860s with the commission for Aida to celebrate the opening of the Suez Canal. The 1870s saw many celebrated productions of Aida, which many thought to be his final opera. During this period, he composed his only string quartet. His Requiem, often called God's Opera, premiered in 1874 and remains among the greatest religious compositions of his age or any other. In the late 1870s, he was secretly tempted out of retirement by Boito's efforts to mold Shakespeare's Othello into a work for Verdi and the Italian opera stage. Boito also worked with Verdi on strengthening the librettos for the earlier Simone Boccanegra and Don Carlo. 1887 saw the premiere of Otello, which was a triumph for both the librettist and the composer. The aging Verdi had managed to exceed the genius of his earlier efforts and to produce a work that was easily on par with his great German rival and contemporary, Richard Wagner. And, after a 5-decade hiatus, he added to the Otello triumph with his belated return to comic opera with the equally magisterial masterpiece, Falstaff. He published his last composition, 4 Sacred Pieces, in 1898. He died in January 1901, within a week of the stroke that had felled him. On the occasion of his public funeral, a chorus nearing 1,000 sang Va Pensiero from Nabucco. 300,000 countrymen and women of a united Italy followed the slow-moving carriage to the crypt of La Casa di Riposo. The greatest maestro of Italian opera is perhaps the only composer whose late settings of Shakespeare are often argued to equal the greatness of their original source. He was 87 years old when he shuffled off his mortal coil.